What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 NFL podcast, the official podcast of the All 22 fantasy football platform, the only fantasy football game with full 53-man rosters, including offensive linemen, where you get to choose personnel packages and have access to PFF grading and advanced stats to make decisions each week. To learn more, visit all-22.com. Ray, how you feeling today, man? I'm honestly a little beat up after last night's game. Ray and I went to the Giants Dallas game last night. Ray's a Cowboy fan.
Excuse you.
A Cowboy fan, and there was a lot of Giants fans there. So I'm sure you're feeling kind of good.
No, I'm feeling awful. Okay, we got back very late. I feel like so if we sound like we were at the game last night and look like we were at the game last night, please be understanding that we were at the game last night. And a 2003 slugfest, 3rd and 12, throw it to the fullback in the flat game broke out. That's what we went all the way to Metlife to see. But it's Mike McCarthy versus an offense that's trying to limit some of the exposure to Daniel Jones, who apparently has forgotten how to throw deep passes downfield. So that's pretty much what you're going to get is a lot of field goals and, an offense scoring 20 points to win a game. I mean,
but we got to see Aubrey in person and
he missed.
He did, but he's legit, man. He is pretty legit. Also, it seems like the Cowboys offense is literally just, hey, let's get the ball in CeeDee Lamb's hands and hope that he breaks a 60-yard touchdown, which he did. But it's not creative at all.
No, it's a bunch of curls and hitches, and their definition of creativity for Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer is double slants, slant flats, dragon, and that's it. That's it. There's no overs. There's no nothing. There's hardly any motion. It is the most stagnant offense you will find in today's era of NFL football. And I mean, you could do so many different exercises to prove this too, aside from the fact that you just watch 3rd and 12 or whatever it is, and they throw the pass to the fullback in the flat. Take a look at CeeDee Lamb highlights and touchdowns. And, we go beyond the highlights here, obviously. But if you just take a look at those, try to count the number of times where he was, put in motion or schemed open, or you see another route creating space for him with a rub, or just running off a safety with Brandon Cooks, for example, anything like that. It's literally just, he ran an out route, broke a tackle against New Orleans or something and had a big play, or he went up over the top against the Giants, cut it back into the middle of the field and scored a touchdown. He was just all by himself, with 2 defenders around him. There is no schematic advantage being provided by the Cowboys play callers whatsoever. And I think that just bears out. And honestly, it's honestly very impressive for Dak to do what he's doing and for CeeDee Lamb to do what he's doing, because I think if you took a look at the other primary receiving options across the NFL, they're obviously the focal point of the opposing defense, right? So you would think they are the focal point of their offensive coordinators as far as helping them out. CeeDee doesn't get that help. He doesn't. He's just out there, and it's on him. So that's what you get. 5 field goals from the Giants, and nice throwback to 2004 when you watch the Cowboys.
Right. And I mean, I think my takeaway as well from the game, just being there in person, again, we are all 22. We want to talk about every position. But when you watch the current Cowboys and the current Giants, Lamb and Neighbors really stick out with how special they are. When you're in person, you just see that so clearly. I did see Cooper Beebe make a couple nice plays, although his grade didn't end up being so great.
Dexter Lawrence was across from him. I mean, it's going to happen.
Right. That's tough, but he actually did have some moments. Was there anybody that stood out to you besides those guys?
I mean, well, it's just the nature of the offense. Hunter Lipke, the fullback, actually did stand out. Really, he's probably like the 3rd best player on that entire offense at this point. But I think Mozzie Smith had a good game for the first time in a long time. There were a few snaps where he really reset the line of scrimmage, and I think the numbers bear that out. The Giants averaged less than 2 yards per carry as an offense last night. So, the Cowboys had given up a ton of rushing yards on the ground the last few weeks. They really kind of came in, really set the edge better and got some push on the interior of the defensive line as well, to where you didn't see so many breaks and busts on the defensive side. They were ready for the zone attack from the Giants, and it showed, but it still starts with the actual Jimmies and Joes and Mozzie Smith on the interior doing his job, which he did. He had a great game. So I think his grade is reflective of that. I believe it was like high 80s. He was closing in on 90 there. So he's been struggling a lot out of the gate, but he had a very good game last night. And I think that's something that really stood out to me.
Gotcha. All right, cool, man. Before we get into this week, there's one comment about last week's game that I wanted to make, because it was something I was really looking forward to studying, and I have. And we talked about last week how some of the Saints interior offensive linemen were the highest graded across the season and through the first couple of weeks. Like, they were consistently at the top. Lucas Patrick, Eric McCoy being two of those guys. Even Cesar Ruiz was doing decently well. And then last week they faced the Eagles, right? And while there are players that are matchup proof, I think what we're seeing, right, is that you do have to pay very close attention to the opponent, right? And that's common sense in fantasy football. But in all 22, you really need to know who the opposing defensive linemen are when you're talking about interior offensive linemen. And you can't just say, hey, Eric McCoy has a 93 grade, Lucas Patrick has a 94 grade. Those guys are automatic starts for me, right? When you're going against Jalen Carter and the other guys on that Eagles defensive front, you have to be a little concerned. I went back and reviewed, right? Eric McCoy had a 60 grade and landed on IR. Cesar Ruiz had a 45.5 grade and also is now hurt. Not on IR yet, but hurt. And then Lucas Patrick had a 59.8. So again, when you're looking at your roster, you're looking who to start. Pay attention to who is across from them, especially when a guy like Lucas Patrick, we talked about last week, he had like 6 relatively irrelevant years in a row before this year where he started to play extremely well at the beginning of the season. But a guy like that is not matchup proof. So just don't be too, like a bug in the lights when you see a 94 grade out there, right? It's like the season's early. You still have to pay attention to this stuff. Just don't be fully bought in yet. Saying that, let's get into, some of the results from last week, what we liked, but projecting it, it's Friday, projecting it for this upcoming week. Starting with quarterback, the top quarterback in the NFL right now is Derek Carr, right? As bad as his interior offensive line did, Carr actually had a pretty good game. And I think part of that is he's not turning the ball over extremely, at a high rate or anything like that. 89.6 grade. It is obvious that it is a down year for quarterbacks right now. I know people were making jokes about the 2 high safeties, bring out the run game. And we are seeing that. We are seeing that the impact on the quarterbacks is maybe highlighting some of the running backs, which is kind of exciting, right? If you were born in the 90s or 80s, you look back at the guys you grew up watching. And it's exciting to see these running backs start to do well again. But Jayden Daniels' game to me was, it was the best of the week. It was the best quarterback graded game of the week. It was also maybe the most promising to me for any quarterback, 94.4 grade. But it was more than just the grade to me. He looked fully in control. He's not making mistakes. And he just doesn't look scared, right? And he's not an older prospect. He's not Bo Nix, who also had a good week. He's not a 25-year-old guy. Like, he's still relatively young, same age as Caleb Williams, but he's not showing the same issues that some of those guys are. What are you thinking about Daniels this early in the season?
I think maybe the Bengals are just bad. Like, I feel like we haven't, we talked about them starting slow. Maybe it's not a slow start. Maybe they're just bad. And that's it. They're just bad, and it kind of really caught up to them. I think they really gave no rush. Part of that was maybe trying to play some more contain and not really be disruptive in the pocket and allow some escapability plays from Jayden Daniels. I just don't think they played very well at all. And Jayden Daniels took advantage of it. And I wasn't sure. I think most of us weren't sure until you see it, right? For a rookie quarterback to be able to go in and take advantage of when an opposing defense plays well so early in his rookie season, and he did that. So good for Jayden Daniels, but I still need to see a bit more. I mean, it's a great game. It's one great game against what may be just a flat out bad team. I mean, I just think if you're torching, Cam Taylor Britt, I think you're going to face some stiffer competition than that when you're trying to go to Terry McLaurin most weeks. And, the road's going to be a bit tougher. So yeah, I'm impressed. I'm happy if I have him. I'm glad that he showed it, but I'm not. I'm still, even with a down year at quarterback, not putting him in my starting lineup just yet, unless I have to because of a bye week or something.
Sure. But I mean, and again, when we're talking about promising quarterbacks, we're going to heavily think about rookies, especially at quarterback. Mm-hmm. Nobody else has had a game like this.
No.
Right.
But would you are you changing your quarterback ranking based off of like the first 3 weeks here? Are you like, if in other words, if you were to draft today, would you still take Caleb over him in a rookie draft?
So here's the thing.
Oh, come on.
Here's the thing. It's like, I said this at the time. It's like, the Bears know how to ruin players. So like, are you asking me if I'm an NFL team drafting, would I still take Caleb Williams? Absolutely. Being a fantasy owner, I think he gets a little bit questionable when you're talking about a Bears quarterback.
I think the Bears are going to do the right thing and get a new offensive coordinator next season. That's just me.
I think they need to fire everybody, and I think we talked about that when they drafted Caleb Williams.
You've been wanting to fire everybody on the Bears for years.
Do you remember our conversation? How we were like, "Hey, they're gonna keep the coach. They're gonna suck this year. They're gonna fire the coach. Caleb's gonna be in year 4. He's gonna have had 4 offensive coordinators in 4 years, and that sucks. Like that sucks for a talent like that. So that's a legitimate concern that I have for Caleb Williams because I think he's so talented. And yeah, I'd still take him first, of course.
Okay, they don't say all that stuff and then still take him first. That's
how worried are you about Trevor Lawrence at this point?
I'm not. Here's the thing: I could be worried about Trevor Lawrence and then not see a better option in there that really kind of take his place on like waivers or this upcoming rookie class, for example. So am I worried? Yes, but I also kind of saw this coming. I think we are. This has been kind of, one of my spiels or one of my sort of hills is that I don't think Doug Peterson's the right guy over there. I never have. I thought he was the right guy to take them out from under the nonsense of Urban Meyer, because that was just a joke and they needed a grown up in the room. And then he takes them to a certain point, and then that's it. I don't think he can elevate in today's game an offense to the level that it needs to be. And if you're screaming that he won a Super Bowl less than a decade ago, and that's fantastic. Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl. That guy has an offense that's less imaginative and less free. It's more stringent than like Madden 2005, like playbooks and play calls. Like you can create a playbook on NCAA with way more effectiveness than what Mike McCarthy, who's getting paid 7 figures, puts out in front of you on Sunday. So that literally 7 years ago could not matter any less. So I think Peterson is someone who kind of righted the ship, got the sort of the culture to a decent enough place. But when it comes to 2024 football and what he has with a young quarterback, I don't think he can elevate that situation and really take Trevor Lawrence's game to the next level. And that environment is very important. So am I worried? Yeah, this year. But if they go out and get a new guy next year and they hire someone like Bobby Slowick or something, and, we're going to start playing, 3 steps ahead here, hypotheticals, then I'm back on the Lawrence. I'm on the Lawrence bandwagon again. So if you're someone like me who has Lamar Jackson and Trevor Lawrence, or Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love comes back from injury, possibly this week, then that's your starter. And you got, Lawrence as your backup, and you just wait to see if that situation improves at all.
Trevor Lawrence threw 3 games, right? Week 1, 79.6 against the Dolphins. Week 2 against Cleveland, 55.2. Week 3 against Buffalo, 57.1. So I think what the story's really telling you is just that, again, like, he's not matchup proof. He's not one of those quarterbacks that every week you can just put out there and he's going to have an absolute gem of a game. He just played 2 of the better defenses in the NFL. This week he has the Texans, which is another really difficult matchup. So I expect him to be, again, maybe not somebody you want to start. Go ahead.
No, I just said that's tough.
That's tough, right? But then he has Indianapolis, then he has Chicago, then he has the Patriots. So, that's what I'm saying. Like, yes, maybe this is not the week to start him. I think the next 3 games after that, you probably can and be okay. I don't know if this is going to be a season, like you just said, where maybe we're not going to get the high end that we want in Trevor Lawrence, but I think he's still startable when there's favorable matchups. Okay, let's go to
I got a
running.
question for you. I got a question for you then.
I mean,
Are
18
you
minutes
starting?
in, we're still on quarterback. All
Yeah,
right.
we're still on
Okay.
quarterback. Okay. Yeah. Are you
Go ahead.
starting? Would you start Sam Darnold versus the Packers, or would you start Trevor Lawrence versus the Texans this week?
Trevor Lawrence against the Texans or Sam Darnold against the Packers. I'm just pulling up Sam Darnold's player card in all 22 to take a look for myself. I mean, he's been unbelievable.
I know
And
he's been.
he just played San Francisco, and Houston came out with a 69.5 and a 73.5. So he's in Green Bay. I'm not gonna lie, man. That's tough.
That's why I'm asking it. The listeners want to know.
I mean, I know
People
your
have to
answer
know.
is going to be Sam Darnold, right? I mean,
I
you're
asked the
setting yourself.
question.
Okay,
I asked the
I'm
question.
gonna start Trevor Lawrence probably
Oh,
because I'm not in panic mode yet.
coward. Okay,
I'm not a coward. I just don't panic like you do.
Okay, panic. You just crapped on the guy. Now you're saying go out there and get it done, kid.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
fair
gonna
enough.
believe in the guy rather than the guy that showed me that maybe I shouldn't believe in him. But he does. I mean, Sam Darnold's crushing it. If you started Sam Darnold, again, you're happy as a pig in mud. All right, running backs, dude. David Montgomery, 86.9. Wanted to talk about that one for a second because we talk about these positions where there are committee approaches to the position, right? With Gibbs in that offense, they really are using Montgomery in the perfect way, right? Like they don't have to ask him to go outside his comfort zone. They're really using him between the gaps. He's efficient. He just does that role so well, and it's showing in his grade. And I think it speaks volumes to how to attack the running back position and which players to kind of target is those players that maybe, again, maybe like if you have Bijan or you have Saquon or you have those kind of running backs week to week, maybe their grade is not always going to be in the 80s, right? And it's because they're asked to do everything. And it's hard for a running back to do that. This is a position where you can get away with some cheat codes, and David Montgomery might be a cheat code. Chuba Hubbard, 92.0 grade this week or last week. That's great for him, but he's another example of that. He's not a bell cow guy. He's being used in a way that's efficient for him. But Braylon Allen, again, 87.7 for the Jets, really kind of becoming this intriguing prospect at running back where, before he was definitely an afterthought, probably a free agent in a lot of leagues. Now I think he's almost a must roster guy.
If he keeps catching the ball pretty decently, then yes. I think both of them are great call outs because, again, we're not sitting here worried about just volume. As long as they get enough volume, then great. I think Braylon Allen's role needs to grow a little bit more in order to really reach rosterable. And then, because I tend to go short on running backs on this platform and typically don't find myself in 21 personnel very often.
What is
as a
short to
result.
you? Do you like 3 or 2? Like sometimes I have 2 and that's
Sometimes,
it.
yeah, two.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, sometimes I have just 2, and so I'm not running a 2-back formation there for my offense. So if I'm going to keep just 2, I still need a higher snap share just in case anything happens to my top guy before I'm comfortable with Braylon Allen as my number 2 guy. If you keep a third and you want him as the third and you want to see how this goes, then that's great. David Montgomery, on the other hand, is a bit more stable. He has a defined role and the history to back it up. He's clearly a Dan Campbell guy, and while as a Gibbs owner and other formats that might frustrate the heck out of you, but here it's an opportunity because, again, we're not worried about just straight volume here. It's about efficiency and how well you're actually playing in every facet of the game, and Montgomery does his role incredibly well. So if he keeps it up, then by all means, well, not even if he keeps it up, as of now, as of just all season, he should be either he's a great second back, and you could have him as your RB1 in your depth chart, and you'll be perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with starting David Montgomery at running back. So yeah, find the guys who do their role very well, and it's a big enough role that it matters on Sundays for their teams, and you got yourself a running back.
So the guy I'm concerned about at this point is Rachaad White, and I'm going to give you props because you were the one that told me that he is not the talent that he looked like last year. That, maybe that was a fluke. Maybe he's not going to be the next guy that steps up and is a bell cow. He's still getting the snaps. Don't get me wrong. 42 snaps last week, but he's starting to lose some to Bucky Irving, which is interesting. 68.9 week 1, 51.8 week 2, and then 60.7 last week against the Broncos. This isn't a juggernaut defense that he's going against, and just not really performing well 2 weeks in a row. This week is the Eagles. Next week after that, Atlanta. Then it's the Saints. Then it's Baltimore. Then it's Atlanta again. Then it's the Chiefs. Then it's the 49ers. Like, this is a guy right now that, with that matchups coming ahead and the value at running back, I'm honestly probably moving on from him.
I never started with him. So yeah, please move on. Bucky Irving, I like a lot. He plays better than he tests, but that's also a tough road. So, even if you pick up Bucky Irving or anything, it's probably not a comfortable guy to put in your lineup unless you absolutely have to, because he's going to face a lot of tough defenses. And that offense is not going to go through him or through any of the backs really anymore. It's all about, you see the season Chris Godwin's having. They want to get Mike Evans even more involved. So that's going to be the story of the Bucs offense. It's going to be through the air. And Bucky Irving is, he's probably going to grow into a larger role, but not one that's going to ascend just yet this season into what you're comfortable starting in all 22. But for 2025 and beyond, that's a good play.
So let's stay there, because the number one receiver in all 22 right now is Chris Godwin with a 90.8 grade on the season. You must feel like a proud dad.
Yeah, I mean, this is the guy we saw a few years back, and then, he had the knee injury against New Orleans, I believe, and that even when he came back and was still good, he never kind of was back to what we saw in, for example, 2019, 2020-ish. It took him another year or so to get back into that 80 plus, knocking on the door of top 10 receiver status in the league. And he's there now. He's been fantastic to start the year. It hasn't been the toughest of roads when it comes to opposing secondaries, but I mean, he's done everything you would want him to do. And to this point has outshined Mike Evans. I think they're both playing their role incredibly well. And yeah, it's just good to see him again now, age 28 season. So you kind of look ahead and you say, okay, 24 and 25, and that's probably it. But enjoy the high level play while you have him, because if you do have him, you either bought low when he was recovering and coming back from that injury, or you just kind of, held on to him for the long haul, and now you're reaping the benefits. So it's a good story all around.
For sure. Juwan Jennings, 90.6 grade, is the highest graded receiver last week. Malik Neighbors, most promising, 83.8 last week. Then yesterday, we got a 72.5, which is still a really solid grade against a really tough defensive unit. DJ Moore is the guy I'm concerned about, 58.2. And I think if I go back, this is like the second or third week in a row.
You're just harping on DJ Moore.
I kind of have to at this point. He's telling the story. His grade is telling the story. I'm just reading the script.
I'm still not concerned. I'm still not concerned. I actually didn't pay close attention to what he did this past week, but I'm still not concerned.
So week 1, 64.6, week 2, 63.4, last week, 58.2 against the Colts. This isn't a great cornerback room, to be honest, with the Colts there.
It's not.
So I'm concerned, man. I'm legit concerned about DJ Moore.
Yeah, but you don't know what happened. He could have, I don't know, he could have had COVID a couple weeks ago, and then it's just getting back. You don't know. Slow start. When you look at the rest of his career, you could just chalk this up. 5 weeks from now, you can look back at this and just say, well, it was a slow start. I'm glad I didn't overreact to anything, because it's DJ Moore, and he's still in the prime of his career. He's 27 years old, and his previous quarterbacks were, complete just, replacement level, just nonsense that he had to deal with. And now he's got one. So yeah, he just started a little slow. You don't want to be that guy looking back 5 weeks from now, missing out on a month of great DJ Moore play because he had a slow start in September. That's all I'm saying. I'm not panicking yet.
Okay, fair. All right, let's go to tight end. The most concerning performance was Charlie Warner, 55.9 grade. Top performer on the season is still Isaiah Likely, 88.6. Cole Kmet had an 86.6 for the highest grade of the week. And then the most promising, we finally saw Dalton Kincaid kind of have his game, 76.5. So a great game for Kincaid there.
Yeah, I mean, those all sound about right. I think Kincaid's like an example too. He kind of started out a little slow, and now look. So it could just be one of those things. Some guys are just starting out slow. Speaking of slow starts, we didn't mention him, but you might have in last week. But um, Mark Andrews has actually turned. It's just he just hasn't gotten the big roll and started out very slow as a result. I don't know what's going on with him over there. He's 28 years old. The offense seems to fit him. I mean, like you could put Isaiah Likely on the field without taking off Mark Andrews. I just don't understand how they've just completely kind of done this. I don't understand it. For those who are only listening audio only, I did like a little seesaw thing there. It's like I thought it would be an and situation, not an or situation at tight end, and it seems to be more ors. And even when they played Dallas last week, it was Charlie Kohler who ended up with a big reception through the air and making an impact in the passing game. So I have no clue what the heck is going on with Mark Andrews. People have probably been screaming that for the last couple of weeks already, but just overall, even when he's performing well and he is on the field because he's grading well, he's hardly getting any snaps to actually do anything with and make an impact in all 22. So I'm very concerned. I don't know what's going on.
It's a good call out. I'm concerned as well. And before this season, there were a few leagues where I was targeting Andrews as a trade candidate coming off the injury, thinking this is an elite tight end talent. There's only a few of them. He's a guy to go get, try to buy cheap since he's coming off of injury. But then when you go look and you see that he's missed significant time throughout his career, this isn't just like new. I'm a little concerned buying a 28-year-old tight end that doesn't stay on the field, right? Like, I think that's legit concerning. And I think maybe Baltimore is thinking kind of the same thing. It's like, hey, likely super talented. If we have to put our money into one of these guys, like maybe at this point, it's like, maybe they're saying it's likely. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. He made the snap minimum by one snap last week.
Crazy.
He cleared it by one. That's insane to me.
For a top 5 tight end in the NFL in years past.
Exactly.
Right.
Who's still in his 20s. 28 is like when they start being great. Of course, you're the guy who says that, right? So
26 is like the start, and then like 28's prime.
Yeah. I don't know.
All right. Let's go to tackle. My boy, Charles Cross, still the number 1 tackle, 88.7. Penny Sewell had the top tackle grade of the week, 91.2. My other boy, JC Latham, another fantastic performance, 75.6. Laramie Tunzel is what I'm concerned about, 52.8. And if I remember correctly, again, I'm not putting guys in the concerning list where it's just a 1-week thing. This is a reoccurring thing at this point for Tunzel. Should we be concerned?
He turned 30, which is like a 28 for other positions. I don't know. Why am I the one being so patient with all these guys? I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned yet. If I drafted so well that I have another tackle off the bench ready to go that has the track record of someone like Tunsil, then sure. Then by all means, I guess that means kudos to you if you have that. But otherwise, I'm not concerned enough yet to where I'm taking a Laramie Tunsil out of my starting lineup and putting in a Terrence Steele or some other tackle 3, that you'd otherwise typically find on your bench. I'm not ready to do that yet.
Okay. All right. Any other guys at tackle you want to call out before we move to guard?
Yep. You nailed it. I just wish they would stop calling not holds against Tyler Guyton, but that's a different discussion.
We'll have that one day. All right. James Daniels, 93.3 grade. He's the highest graded guard now that Lucas Patrick faced the Eagles. Sorry, my handwriting is atrocious. I'm going to move on to the most promising because I can't read who my top guy of the week is. It's Jackson Powers Johnson is the most promising to me. 68.5. It's his first game being healthy enough to play, I believe. And they put him out there. He didn't have a ton of snaps, but it was enough to meet the minimum. 68.5 for a guy in his first NFL game. To me, that's a great start. And then Trey Pipkins, 46.2. So that's concerning there. Should I try to figure out who the top guy was? Let me see.
I mean, I could look it up, and now I'm looking more at my Trey Pipkins stuff. So I'll just talk about that, which a thing to note, I believe both guards are going to be out now for the Chargers. Probably not a good situation. I've never really been in on Pipkins either. So if you do have him and you're relying on him, yeah, I'm pretty concerned.
Okay. The top guy was Kevin Zeitler, 94.5. Got to give him his props. We might never see his name at the top again.
Wiley
also.
Vet. Yeah, Wiley Vet. James Daniels, 27 years old. Do you think he just figured it out, or is this just a hot streak?
I think that the talent around him is so much better than it's been for the rest of his career that it's helping. But I also think it's probably a hot streak.
Yeah. Might sell high depending on your depth.
Two good games in a row.
Yeah.
The Chargers are a decent defensive front, although their interior is pretty weak. Broncos, not great. Falcons, decent, but young. Yeah, I'm probably selling. He's got tough matchups coming up in the next few weeks. He's got the Cowboys in week 5. He's got the Jets in week 7, Giants in week 8. Those interiors are really good. I'm selling now.
Yeah. And you might have a grace period to try to sell him too, in the sense that, like after they play the Cowboys, I mean, you might be playing the Cowboys without Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence. And what if Mozzie Smith's performance was just a one-game thing and they go back to being the Cowboys that gave up like 500 yards rushing over 2 weeks in weeks 2 and 3? So just something to note. You probably have a bit of a window to try to sell him if you can, or if you need to milk that performance, another week or so, you might have it. But I think he's a sell high guy. And at that age, you probably get a decent amount back for him.
Absolutely. All right, going to center, Eric McCoy is still technically the highest graded. He will likely fall out of that now being on IR. He won't meet the snap requirements to be in the 50th percentile. So last week of Eric McCoy being on top. Tyler Linderbaum had a great week, 93.7. It's what we expect from him. Zach Frazier, though, most promising again for me, 88.8 grade. Again, I think that interior is getting better. And I just like the offensive line in general. They're fighting for sure. Lloyd Cushenberry, though, I didn't put him as my most concerning last week because after his 53.1 in week 1, he had a 67.1. So I saw that rise back. But 47.7 last week against Green Bay, which is a good, not great defensive interior. If you look, Kenny Clark has actually been struggling pretty hard. I think at this point, I'm concerned that maybe the Titans aren't really unlocking what they need out of Cushenberry.
If you look at his career to date over the long haul, there's not enough of a track record there for me to dismiss the performance. Laremy Tunsil's playing poorly so far, but I could look at his track record. I could look at the last 5 years and say this is a consistently very good player. Cushenberry hasn't really been that. He had a good year last year. He played very well last year. Prior to that, he wasn't. So a slow start here in 2024, is he just reverting back to the guy he is, which is the 2020 to 2022 version of Lloyd Cushenberry? Or is this a slow start and he really is the guy from 2023? Track record lends me to believe that he's more so the guy from 2020 to 2022, which is really just more of a replacement level type of player who might have a few up weeks here or there. So yeah, I share the concern. He's not a starting center for me.
Okay.
Or maybe he barely is just because of the lack of depth of the position, but
right.
Yeah.
Let's go to the defensive side of the ball, where Sexy Dexy still at the top of the defensive interior with its 91.1. That might end after last night's game. He had a 62 grade against Dallas. I said Cooper Beebe at times was getting the best of him, and it actually is showing in Dexy's grade as well. Jalen Carter is the top performer of the week, 93.5. That's exciting. Again, I think that at this point, he is one of those players that might be matchup proof. Like he might be that elite guy that even if he's going against the number 1 center in the league, he will be okay. Chris Jenkins, I'm very excited to report he met the snap count minimum and also had a 75.4 for the Bengals, who you dumped on earlier, right?
They're going to need him. I actually wrote in my notes, they're going to need him.
They're going to need him. And you know what? Maybe this is the, week 3, week 4, we're going to start to see him get more time and, look better. He's one of the prospects I like, so I'm obviously going to call him out. And then Kobe Turner, second week in a row as my most concerning, 47.4 last week, 48 this week, I believe, something like that. So another really poor performance from him. I'm definitely concerned now. I think that Aaron Donald effect is really showing for him. And it's kind of sad because a lot of the other guys on that defense are doing pretty well.
Yep. Yeah, he's the victim of the Aaron Donald effect and him not being there anymore. I'm out. I'm not starting him at all.
It was actually a 41.4, so
not even rostering him. Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to edge. Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, we should probably take a minute and talk about Aiden Hutchinson because at this point, I think he is the defensive player of the first 3 games of the season. I think he's leading in pressures by like almost double digits, which is incredible. 95.4 season grade for him so far. And I honestly think at this point, with what he's done this early in the season, he might actually like have a shot at the sack record, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we had a segment, I think it was like last year even, or maybe, yeah, I think it was last year, not even this past offseason, where the question was whether he could be a superstar. And at least my take was he's great. He's a great player. He may even be a star, but not a superstar. I think he's a superstar. I think he's clearly a superstar. I think it's just everything there is just working. And yeah, he's a superstar.
I think it's helpful also that they really beefed up that interior of the defensive line, because now he's getting so much more one-on-one matchups, and he's going to win those like almost every single time.
Yeah, he's a bull.
Nick Herbig, 95.5 grade. And we talked about how, I'm all about the Steelers resurgence, but it really is because of that defense that the offense is able to play such conservative football and score not a lot of points and win some football games. But Nick Herbig with Alex Singleton, is that his name, right? And then TJ Watt, or Alex Highsmith. No, Highsmith.
There is an Al Singleton who's also a linebacker.
Right. That's not who I was talking about, clearly.
Oh, okay.
TJ Watt, that group of guys is playing extremely well. I think Cam Hayward is back, also playing well. Excited about Steelers, but what do you think of Nick Herbig? Is there a future there?
If people listen to us, we talked about how good he was during the pre-draft process heading into the 2023 draft. So Nick Herbig has gotten better with, through each week, even dating back to last season. But 17, 17, and 19 snaps per game so far. So we need to see it continue with a higher snap share so that he can become an actual staple in our lineups. So we've now seen the talent. Now it's just time for him to grow into the role. And then when those two come together, you got yourself a very good player, assuming that, he doesn't drop off with additional snaps. And he even when studying him, he was not that type of player that seemed to drop off motor wise or anything else. There are guys like that, and Nick Herbig was not one of those guys. So I don't really have a concern there. It's just, him just growing into a bigger role. And then this is a guy that could have a good impact, a positive impact on your lineup. So yeah, I'm all in. And again, if you listened to us, last year, you could have probably gotten him in the 6th round of your rookie draft or something like that. Now you have a high value position player that's on the upswing with a lot of promise that you're just waiting to kind of be set free. So I'm going to pat ourselves on the back there.
I like it. So the most promising I had was Brian Burns with an 89.7, but last night he had a 67.4. Still not a bad game, but when you pay a player to be the top paid defensive or edge rusher in the league, you want to get a little more out of him. So hoping to get more consistency out of Burns, but last week's was definitely promising. I think this week we saw yesterday, Kayvon Thibodeau actually looked pretty good and made some nice plays. So I wonder if it is like maybe an either or thing with them. The most concerning, again, for the second week in a row, I'm going to dump on him. Montez Sweat has been brutal with the way that he's graded through 3 weeks, right? Week 1, 54.6, week 2, 62.7, week 3, 50.9. They brought him in to be the guy. I didn't ever think he was that. That's my opinion of him when I scouted him. How are you feeling?
So, I think I'm onto something because we don't know where their lockers are. What if DJ Moore and Montez Sweat have the same sickness to start the season, and that's why they're just kind of starting slow? And these players that have graded out pretty well in the past and have been solid options for you are just having a slow start. The thing about Montez Sweat is coming up against the Rams here soon. It's like I have that game circled. If he can't bounce back, if he can't have a get right game against Rob Havenstein and Alaric Jackson, then I'm joining you on the concerned train there. But until then, I'm still wait and see. Most of my rosters, just my typical team building, I have a pretty heavy load on edge. I have, 7+ typically even. So I probably have a good enough option to throw out there and not have to wait and see if there's a true problem with Montez Sweat. I can wait and see if he bounces back from this. But if you're not quite as deep there, that's the game to circle. If after that Rams game, he's still having problems, then at that point you push the panic button.
Let's stay with the Bears because I have a promising and a concerning at linebacker for the Bears. The concerning is TJ Edwards. It's actually the lowest grade I've ever had for a starting linebacker on my team, and I started TJ Edwards. He had 1 point with a 29.9 grade. It was brutal, right? But we're seeing that Jack Sanborn, who had 3 snaps in week 1, 11 in week 2, had 31 snaps last week and an 87.1 grade. I wonder if there's going to be a switch at some point there.
Yeah, it might be. Or he was also sick. Maybe Edwards was also sick. It's just gone around. It's just a very bad cold going around. It could be it. Like, it's probably already cold in Chicago this time of year, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost October. Yeah. I mean, linebackers are under attack no matter who you have, unless it's like the top guy. There's going to be a week where it's your turn to just get mashed no matter who you are. So I think it was just his time. So we'll see. But yeah, I think keep an eye on that. If Jack Sanborn again is kind of taking the snap share there, you might want to make a switch.
Right. All right. So something to watch. Dorian Williams was the highest graded player of the week, 90.9 for the Bills. Fred Warner, 94.4 grade for San Francisco on the season. He's crushing it. We talked about that. We don't need to talk about that anymore. Let's go to corner, because corner's pretty bizarre and interesting.
All the listeners have to thank me, though, for Dorian Williams, because I did this. It's the same exact thing I did with Jalen Johnson, okay? Mm-hmm. You all should pick up Dorian Williams because he was not playing well. And then I dropped him, and then he played very well. This is exactly what I did with Jalen Johnson after 3 years of just being okay and not that great. And then I drop him, and then he's an all-pro, and then he signs a big contract, and then he's still like the same all-pro player that he was in his contract year. So someone might say it was the Jacksonville Jaguars and everybody crushed it. I'm going to say you're welcome.
I'm going to follow this up with the cornerback. The most concerning is Derek Stingley with a 59 grade, and he's having a pretty rough season. So why don't you tell the people, or why don't you apologize to the people for that one there?
I am not yet. I'm going to preach patience for everybody, especially
everybody you're wrong with. Anybody you're wrong, just patience, people.
Some of them I have not taken strong stances on. I don't think I took a strong stance on Sweat.
Stingley.
Yeah, Stingley. But, he had a great year last year, and he had a good game against Chicago. So maybe he's just starting slow too. And this might be who Derek Stingley is. He might have very good games, very good stretches, and then not good stretches. He could be the cornerback version of Brian Burns, who you kind of alluded to, right? Where he was like promising and he was doing well. And then all of a sudden, like Dallas, he's like kind of average. And then you see Kayvon pick it up a bit. And yet they just kind of never can just get it all together. That might be Derek Stingley, where he goes on a good stretch. He has a great performance, and then you start feeling good about him again. And then he just has that just dud, and you can just never quite figure it out or be comfortable enough to consistently start this player that you have a belief that he could be a top player, right? But just, you haven't seen that level yet. And that might be Derek Stingley. This is year 3 now. So this is where players show you who they are. So if this keeps up and it's just up and down, 50, 70, 50, and then you go back to 80 and then 60, then that's just who he is. And we're just going to have to live with it.
Glad you.
I did say that, I do have an out because he did have a foot injury and you never knew how he could recover from that coming into the league. So I have an out.
Sure. All right. We talked about in the preseason how the Bills cornerback room was so deep all of a sudden after last season. They actually have the highest graded corner in the league right now with an 81.6 in Christian Benford. Riley Moss I have a nickname for Riley Moss, but Ray said I'm not allowed to say it.
I don't even remember what it was, but you probably should not say it then.
Dude, Snow Leopard. I think that's such a cool nickname. Snow Leopard, because it's the rarest animal to see.
You just said it after.
Yeah, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. Okay. I just didn't tweet it. I didn't do it from our All 22 account. Okay. Now they can tie it to me as a white corner. They can be like, I'm allowed to give another white corner.
I'm going to make your picture bigger here too, just so everybody can see you.
Snow Leopard, Riley Moss.
Stop saying that.
I think that's dope. That's such a cool nickname. Anyway, he was the highest graded corner of the week, 91.1. And then Zion McCullen is the promising corner that I want to shout out. 67 snaps last week, 90.8 grade. The week before, 91 snaps, 78.6. Week 1, only 11 snaps for a 64 grade. So they're using him. They're ramping up his snap count. He's showing up and playing really well. I knew nothing about this guy. No idea if you do either, but somebody to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm not putting anybody on my list who's a 5th round player from Sam Houston State that I hadn't heard of until this season. Yeah, that's not at a corner as variable, or at a position as variable as corner from week to week. It's just not happening, at least not yet. If I have an open roster spot and just in case, and I want to kind of block someone else from getting him, sure, yeah, great, then I'll do it. Otherwise, no, not keep my eye on this guy. I'm not doing it.
All right. Well, I think it's.
And I forget what you said about all the other corners before that because of So anyway,
Snow Leopard.
That's
Let's go to safety. Julian Love, still the highest rated safety, 90.6. Brian Branch, though, another great and promising week. This is 3 weeks in a row where I've shouted him out for his performance, and it's gotten better each week. This is his best week, 90.5. Let's see who is the top. Brandon Jones, 92.8 for the Broncos, highest of the week. And then most concerning to me, Javon Holland, 54.5. It's another down week for him. In my mind, that Miami defense has just been riddled with injuries. I don't think that they have it together. Jalen Ramsey isn't playing well either. I think the pressure for Holland is massive. And when you're a safety and you're kind of like the best player on the defense, I feel like there's just a lot going on and a lot in his hands right now.
Yeah, there's too much stress being put on the very back end of that defense because of the losses on the defensive line. Jalen Ramsey, is he 30 yet? He's close to it, if he's not already. And yeah, I think it's just it's too much on the plate of a safety. And now that doesn't even consider the game script issues that they're going to have as a result of having no quarterback now moving forward, at least for the foreseeable future. I don't think we've heard anything as far as a definitive timeline on Tua yet. If he does play at all this season, which I tend to think he will. I think it's one of those things come Halloween, he's going to be feeling good and want to get back in. But, that's a tough one to really figure out because it might be for the best that he just doesn't play, period. But try telling a 26-year-old player that, right? So I think game script issues, injuries, the losses that they had in the offseason, everything is just piling up for the Dolphins there on defense. So unless you want to take, I mean, he's still Javon Holland, but you're not going to get the best version of Javon Holland that you've gotten in previous years as a result of these circumstances. So the only things to really keep an eye on there are probably not selling low on Javon Holland. You're probably keeping him and just seeing how he does. And then monitoring someone like a Chop Robinson because he's a rookie and you want to at least see some flashes and that whole deal. Otherwise, you go to Detroit and it's like so much different there. They've beefed up their defensive line, like you've said. They have two very, promising young corners in Terrion Arnold and Rakestraw and so forth. So you just expect that the corner position is just going to get better with time. They're not there yet, but they're rookies, right? And it's their first month in the NFL. So as the situation in front of a player like Branch gets even better, right? And maybe that allows them to even use him more versatilely, if that's a word, and do more things with him as well. It's just, I think that whole situation is just on the upswing in Detroit. They've done a great job with that roster overall. It's really something to salute.
Cool. Yeah. And just going back to Holland for a second, losing, Bradley Chubb, who, when he's healthy, he's an effective edge rusher, to have injuries to other edge rushers on the team, to lose Christian Wilkins, right? The amount of pass rush that this team has lost this year is massive for DBs, right? We talk about that all the time. Holland is, again, he's taking that all on. Anybody else you want to shout out? Any predictions for this week? Anything else?
Over under 0.5 missed kicks for Brandon Aubrey for the rest of the season. Disclaimer, if they trot him out for like a 68-yarder, like it doesn't count if he misses. like from 60 and in, does he miss another field goal this season?
I wonder if you can make those contingencies, like when you go place a bet.
That's how Vegas gets you. Like you can't do that.
I'd say over half.
Okay.
Because that's crazy to think that he would go perfect for the rest of the year.
Okay.
Do you want to take that bet or something? Want to do it live on the air?
No, it's my guy. I'm not going to jinx him like that. One thing to note, I don't think this is anything, but I just wrote it in the notes and just, willing to see how it goes. Dexter Lawrence, his stop percentage in the run game in 2023 was 11.9%. So far in 2024, including last night's game against Dallas, is just 4.5%. and had just one stop versus the Cowboys last night, which was the toughest outing, considering, Tyler Smith, Zach Martin and such on the interior. But it's a pretty deep drop off. So just looking to kind of monitor that in the run game. Obviously, he's still playing fantastic as we've noted. But just something to note, is he quite as dominant as he has been the last couple years? Just something to monitor there. I'm looking at his run defense maybe a little more closely over the next few weeks than I otherwise would have. It's just a figure that stood out to me and just want to point it out for the listeners.
Awesome. All right. So thank you everybody for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at all22_PFF, and give us a review wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, and have a great day.